how I found out my wife was pregnant by her childhood best friend. I'm honestly not sure where to start with this. My brain feels like scrambled eggs tossed in a blender, and I'm just hoping that putting this all down will make some kind of sense. So here it goes. My name's Jason, I'm 42, married to Lisa, who's 39. We have a 7-year-old son named Ethan. By all accounts, we were the picture of an average, imperfect, but functioning family. You know, the kind that argues about who forgot to take out the trash or whose turn it is to pick up dinner, but also manages to make it through the day with some laughs and kisses goodnight. Nothing extraordinary, but comfortable. At least that's what I thought. Last week, everything changed. I'm still not sure if I'm awake or stuck in some bad dream. Lisa sat me down and told me she's pregnant. Great news, right? Except she followed it up with the part that shattered my world. The father is not me. It's her childhood friend, Mark. Yep, the same guy she's been texting and catching up with behind my back for months. I swear, my first reaction was to laugh. Because surely this was some twisted joke? Maybe Ashton Kutcher was hiding behind the couch with a camera, about to yell, "Gotcha!" Nope, dead serious. The look in her eyes was something else. Exhaustion, guilt, and a vulnerability that made my stomach drop like I'd just been punched. She wasn't expecting me to understand or forgive. Maybe she wasn't even sure she could herself. I've spent hours replaying every single moment, searching for signs I missed. Was I too busy working? Too distracted by bills, errands, or kids' soccer practice? Did I stop being the husband she needed, the man she married? She says it all started so innocently, reconnecting with Mark, reminiscing about old times. The occasional text turned into secret dinners and late-night conversations. The just friends phrase? Yeah, that turned out to be the biggest lie. And here's the kicker. I was the good husband, the provider, the guy who did the grocery runs, fixed the leaky sink, and stayed late at work to pay the bills. And all the while, she was living a secret double life. Ethan, our son, remains blissfully unaware. 7 years old, trusting that his parents love each other no matter what. How do I keep that innocence safe when my whole world is crashing down? When I asked Lisa why she didn't tell me sooner, she shrugged and said, "I didn't know how." Right. Because telling your husband you cheated on him and are carrying another man's baby is such a simple conversation. Anger and betrayal swirl inside me like a storm. I've cried, yelled, and questioned everything, including myself. I even caught myself thinking, maybe I wasn't enough, which is ridiculous but also painfully real. Our arguments have become volcanic. "I'm sorry," she said one night, voice shaking, "but it happened. I didn't plan this." And I snapped back, "Neither did I plan this nightmare. I'm a mess. Can't eat, can't sleep. My mind races from one dark corner to another. Do I fight to save this marriage? Or do I pack a bag and never look back? How do I explain this to Ethan when the time comes?" Lisa keeps repeating, "I love you. Mark means nothing. It was a mistake." But how do you believe that when your wife is carrying someone else's child? I haven't told anyone. Not my friends, not my family, not even my therapist. I'm embarrassed, ashamed, scared of their judgment and pity. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet because I don't know where else to turn. If anyone has been through this, if anyone has advice on surviving this emotional apocalypse, please help. Because right now, I'm hanging by a thread. And somehow, I still have no clue what's coming next. So, here's where it all went from bad to worse. A few days after Lisa dropped her bombshell, I was trying to process, pretending to act normal around Ethan, but inside I was a wreck. Then I decided I needed answers. I sat her down, really looked at her, and demanded the whole story. She hesitated, eyes flickering like she was holding a secret too heavy to carry. Her voice cracked as she told me how it began months ago, during one of those just catching up moments with Mark, the old friend from childhood who knew all her secrets, all her dreams, and apparently her weaknesses. I remember her hands trembling as she spoke, twisting a napkin, avoiding my gaze. Every time she tried to meet my eyes, she quickly looked away, The weight of the confession was crushing her. She told me about the dinners, the late-night texts, the feelings she thought were long gone resurfacing like a ghost she couldn't fight. That one night when it wasn't just talking anymore and everything changed. I caught the subtle twitch in her lip when she said, "It meant nothing, but I saw it. The hesitation, the regret, the guilt buried under those words." Her tone was defensive, but underneath it all, I sensed a flicker of sorrow. She wasn't proud, she was broken. And there I was, struggling to breathe, like a fish out of water. My heart pounding, my head buzzing with questions and doubts. I asked about Mark. How long had it been going on? Months? Weeks? Years? She said months. I couldn't believe it. Months of betrayal, and I had been so blind. She tried to explain, saying it wasn't about me, about us, but about something missing in her, about loneliness, about feeling invisible. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a bitter laugh. "So while I'm working my ass off, fixing the house, changing diapers, you're out there chasing ghosts?" She looked hurt. It wasn't like that. I could see the tears building up in her eyes. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that screams louder than any argument. I wanted to hate her, to yell and slam doors, but instead I felt numb, like my emotions were trapped behind a glass wall. Ethan came into the room then, asking for his bedtime story. I looked at him, innocent, trusting, and felt my resolve crumble. How do I tell a 7-year-old that his family is breaking, that the woman he calls mom is carrying another man's child? How do I protect his world from shattering? Lisa apologized over and over, but the words sounded hollow. I wanted actions, not apologies. The nights became unbearable. I'd lie awake, replaying her confession, wondering if I could ever trust her again. I checked my phone compulsively, looking for messages, signs, proof that I wasn't imagining things. The paranoia was suffocating. One evening, I confronted her again, unable to hold it in. "Show me the messages," I said, voice trembling. She hesitated, but then handed me her phone. I scrolled through conversations, texts filled with sweet nothings, plans to meet, stolen moments disguised as just friends. Reading those words felt like swallowing shards of glass. Her face was pale as I looked up, eyes burning with tears. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I whispered. She shrugged helplessly. "I was scared." Scared of losing me? Or scared of losing herself? Our marriage, which once felt like solid ground, was now an earthquake zone. I wanted to believe we could survive this, but every glance, every word was a reminder of the fissures growing between us. And just when I thought I'd reached my breaking point, Lisa said something that made me freeze. "I want to keep the baby." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut, not just because of the betrayal, but because it meant everything was about to get infinitely more complicated. I felt torn between anger, confusion, and an unexpected flicker of fear. What did this mean for Ethan? For me? For the life I thought we had? I spent that night pacing, wrestling with emotions I couldn't name. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed space to think, to breathe. Lisa left for work, and I sat in the empty kitchen, staring at the coffee cup she always used, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I thought the worst was behind me, but it was only the beginning. After Lisa's confession and the storm of emotions that followed, I knew this wasn't something I could handle alone anymore. But what I wasn't ready for was the tidal wave of reactions once the news leaked. It all started with my closest friends, the ones I thought would stand by me. Instead, I got the usual awkward "I'm so sorry" man texts mixed with barely disguised judgment. Then my brother Mike, the one I always thought of as my rock, dropped a bombshell. He said, "You need to man up and deal with it. You're the father, you have responsibilities. Don't be the guy who runs away." It stung harder than I wanted to admit. I wasn't running away, I was drowning. At work, things got weird too. Gossip spread like wildfire. Someone overheard me on a phone call, and suddenly I was that guy. People treated me differently, like I'd caught some contagious disease. I started avoiding lunches, group chats, and even the break room. Lisa's family was no better. Her sister called me once, passive-aggressively dropping hints about family loyalty and how sometimes things happen we don't expect. I wanted to shout, "Yeah, like betrayal." And then came the legal stuff, because as if my personal life wasn't complicated enough, now there were lawyers involved. Lisa insisted we get a paternity test. Not that it would change anything for her, but for me to make sure. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't need a test to know what I already felt in my gut. The day we went to the clinic, I sat across from Lisa, the tension thicker than the fluorescent lighting. The technician took samples and all I could do was wonder what the hell I was doing there. Afterwards, the lawyers started throwing documents in my face. Custody arrangements, child support possibilities, division of assets. Our modest savings account suddenly felt like a battlefield. I was scared, overwhelmed, and utterly lost. And through it all, I felt my identity slipping. Who was I now? The betrayed husband? The father? The guy everyone pitied? My mind spiraled into dark places. I started questioning everything. My worth, my future, even my sanity. One night, alone in the living room, I scrolled through old photos. Lisa and me smiling at our wedding, Ethan's first steps, family vacations. A bitter laugh escaped me. "What a joke," I whispered. "How did we get here?" But then, something unexpected happened. A close friend, Sarah, pulled me aside one evening and said, "Jason, you're stronger than you think. You don't have to figure this out overnight. Just take it one step at a time." Her words were like a lifeline. Maybe I didn't have to collapse under the weight of this mess. Still, the hardest part was telling Ethan. He noticed the change. The cold silences, the occasional tears, the absence of the usual laughter. One evening, he asked me, "Dad, is everything okay with Mom?" I froze. How do you explain that sometimes grown-ups make terrible mistakes? That sometimes families change in ways no one expects? I hugged him tight and said, "We're going through some stuff, buddy. But I love you, and that's the most important thing." Lisa and I agreed to put on a united front for Ethan, at least for now. But behind closed doors, the cracks were deepening. And then, just when I thought I was starting to find some footing, I uncovered something worse. While going through some bills, I found receipts and messages that showed Lisa had been hiding more than just the affair. Credit card charges for trips she never mentioned, texts with Mark that hinted at long weekends away. I confronted her. Her silence was deafening. That night, I realized the betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. I thought I had hit rock bottom. I was wrong. The weight of discovery pressed down on me like a lead blanket. Lisa's silence in response to my confrontation screamed louder than any excuse could. I sat there, scrolling through the charges and messages, each one a fresh stab in my already wounded heart. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded one night, voice shaking, trying to keep it from breaking. She looked away, fingers fiddling with her necklace, eyes distant. "I don't know. It just happened." The irony was brutal. You don't know? You don't know how long you've been spending my money behind my back? How long you've been lying?" Her jaw tightened. "You want to play detective now? I want the truth. All of it?" She sighed, finally meeting my eyes. I was scared. Scared to lose you, scared to lose myself. The money, the trips. I didn't want to hurt you. It was pathetic, and yet somehow still devastating. We had always been tight on money. I worked overtime to cover bills and save a little. Lisa's extra expenses felt like salt in an open wound. I found myself questioning everything. Our house, our life, even our past. What else had she hidden? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, piecing together the puzzle. How many lies could one person live with before it all cracked? The next morning, the silence between us was suffocating. No good mornings, no shared coffee, just two strangers cohabiting a space filled with ghosts of the life we once dreamed of. I reached out to my lawyer, deciding it was time to prepare for the worst. Lisa agreed, reluctantly, to begin discussing separation terms. But something in me still clung to hope. Hope that maybe, somehow, we could salvage this. That maybe our 7-year-old son deserved a family, whole or broken. Weeks went by with talks filled with cold civility. We split bills, divided chores, and tried to act normal when Ethan was around. But the cracks were growing harder to hide. One afternoon, while going through emails, I stumbled upon a Google Doc titled, "Our Future Plans." Curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a chilling outline of Lisa's intentions: plans to move out, file for full custody of Ethan, and keep the house. Mark's name appeared several times as her support system. My chest tightened. This wasn't just betrayal, this was a calculated game. I confronted her with the document. Her eyes darted, voice defensive. "Jason, this is just a contingency. I'm protecting my son. By cutting me out, by lying, I'm not the only one who's been hurt here." The irony? True. But this wasn't just about hurt anymore. It was about survival. Mine. I started attending therapy, something I'd scoffed at before. It was the only place where I could unravel the tangled mess of emotions without judgment. There I learned to face the anger, the shame, and the heartbreak, to understand that the pain wasn't mine alone to bear. But outside those sessions, life kept moving, complicated, cruel, and unforgiving. Friends started taking sides. Lisa's camp grew louder, painting me as the villain who abandoned his family. Social media became a minefield. A single picture of Ethan with Lisa could spark a dozen speculative comments. People didn't know the half of it. And through it all, I realized one brutal truth: family can be the harshest judge of all. In a world where love once ruled, suspicion and bitterness took the throne. I felt like a ghost in my own life, watching, waiting, but barely participating. One night, as Ethan slept upstairs, I sat in the dark, phone in hand, contemplating my next move. That's when the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end chilled me. "It's time you knew everything, Jason." And just when I thought I had uncovered all the secrets, the real nightmare was about to begin. The moment I heard that voice on the phone, my heart dropped. It wasn't just an unknown number, it was a message laced with menace, a promise that my world was about to get worse. "Who is this?" I demanded, voice trembling despite my effort to sound steady. There was a pause, too long to be accidental. "I'm someone who knows what really happened. What Lisa's been hiding." I gripped the phone tighter, trying to steady my breath. "If this is some joke..." "It's not." The voice was cold, clipped, and calm. "You think you've seen the worst? You haven't even scratched the surface." Before I could ask for more, the line went dead. I sat in the silence that followed, mind racing. Who could this be? A friend of Lisa's? Someone from her past? Or worse, someone connected to Mark? The paranoia crept in fast. I called Lisa immediately, hoping to catch her before she left for work. She answered, surprised. "Jason, everything okay?" I got a weird call. Someone claiming to know what you're hiding. Care to explain? There was a flicker of hesitation, too quick to be innocent. "I don't know what you're talking about." I could feel the walls closing in. I started digging again. Texts, emails, receipts, anything that could explain this new threat. Days later, a package arrived at my door. No return address, no note, just a small USB drive. With shaking hands, I plugged it into my laptop. What I saw made my stomach turn. Videos, photos, conversations between Lisa and Mark that went beyond the affair. They discussed plans about hiding money, manipulating me, and worse, a plan to cut me out completely, not just emotionally, but legally and financially. One clip showed Lisa laughing with Mark, mocking me, calling me naive and too weak to fight back. I felt a rage boil up inside me like never before. All the trust, the years, the memories, they felt like a cruel joke. But why was someone sending me this? Was it a warning or a setup? I decided I couldn't face this alone anymore. I reached out to my brother, David. He and I haven't been close since I moved out years ago, but he was the only family I could turn to. After I told him everything, he promised to help. Together, we started planning how to protect what was mine: my home, my son, and my sanity. But Lisa wasn't going down without a fight. She tightened her grip on Ethan, and her lawyers sent me a barrage of threatening letters. They accused me of neglect, questioned my fitness as a father, and demanded I step aside. I realized then that this wasn't just a divorce or betrayal. This was a war. David offered me a place to stay temporarily, away from the constant stress. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night without nightmares. But the day I returned to the house to pack some things, I found an eviction notice taped to the door. Apparently, Lisa had started proceedings to remove me. I stared at the paper, disbelief and fury mixing. "This can't be real," I whispered. It was. I fought back, hiring a lawyer, gathering evidence from the USB drive, screenshots and testimonies. Every day became a battle of phone calls, meetings, and court hearings. Ethan was caught in the crossfire. One afternoon he asked me, "Dad, why do Mom and you fight so much? Will you still live here?" His innocent question shattered me. I didn't have answers, but I promised him one thing: no matter what, I'll always be your dad. Through all the legal chaos, emotional breakdowns, and late-night fights with my own thoughts, I clung to that promise. I knew this story wasn't over. There was more to come. And just when I thought I'd found an ally in my brother, I learned his own secrets that could change everything. I never expected my brother David to become another wild card in this mess. For years we'd barely spoken, drifting apart like two ships lost at sea. But when I called him in desperation, he was the one person who answered, who promised he'd have my back. At least, that's what I thought. The truth hit me like a brick wall during one of our late-night strategy sessions at his apartment. We were going over the mountain of documents, lawyer letters, bank statements, screenshots from the USB drive, everything Lisa and Mark had been hiding. I was tired, frustrated, barely holding it together. David leaned back in his chair, running his fingers through his hair. "Jason, there's something you need to know," he said, voice low. My heart stopped. "What is it?" I asked, already fearing the worst. David hesitated, then sighed. I've been talking to Lisa." I blinked. "What?" "Look, it's not what you think." She reached out to me, asked for help. I thought maybe I could mediate, get you guys to settle this without ruining the family. "Without ruining the family?" I echoed, incredulous. "David, she's trying to evict me from my own house." I know, he said quickly, waving his hands. "But it's complicated. She's scared. She feels trapped." I thought if I could talk to her, maybe we could find common ground. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then I found the messages. Secret texts between David and Lisa, planning how to pressure me to sell the house, how to manipulate custody arrangements to their advantage. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My own brother was working with my wife against me. I confronted David the next day. His face was unreadable. "Why?" I asked, voice cracking. "Jason, you have to understand," he said quietly. "This is about survival. You've been gone so long, they feel like you abandoned them. I'm just trying to keep the family intact, even if it means making hard choices." "By stabbing me in the back? It's not like that," he protested. "You have to see the bigger picture." But I couldn't. Not anymore. From that moment, everything changed. Trust shattered into a million pieces. I started isolating myself, spiraling into anger and despair. Lisa sensed it and turned up the pressure. More legal threats, more accusations. The court hearings became battlegrounds. I had to fight for my home, my son, my dignity, and all the while the public scrutiny grew. Neighbors whispered, friends picked sides, and social media exploded with speculation. I felt like I was drowning in a storm I didn't ask for. But despite everything, Ethan remained my anchor. One evening, after a long day of court, he surprised me with a drawing, a family of 3 holding hands, smiling under a bright sun. "Is this us?" I asked, voice soft. He nodded, eyes hopeful. "I want that too, buddy. I want that more than anything." And for the first time in months, I believed maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this nightmare. But the truth about David was only the beginning, because buried deeper in the mess were secrets even darker, secrets that threatened to destroy not just my marriage, but my entire sense of self. Just when I thought I had nowhere else to turn, the past came crashing back with a vengeance. After the bombshell about David, I thought things couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. One evening, as I was sifting through old family photos to find something to show Ethan, a glimpse of better times, I stumbled across a folder I didn't recognize. It was buried deep inside a drawer in my desk, an old file folder marked private. Curiosity won over caution. I opened it, and what I found made my blood run cold. Letters. Old letters between Lisa and someone named Michael, the same Michael who was her childhood best friend, the one I now knew was the real father of the baby she was expecting. But these weren't just letters. They were love notes, confessions, apologies, and plans, written years ago before I even met Lisa. One letter read, "I don't know how to tell Jason, but I can't keep this secret forever." I sat back, stunned. Why had Lisa never told me? Why was this buried and hidden away? And then it hit me, this wasn't just a simple affair, this was a lifetime of secrets. I confronted Lisa the next night, the letters heavy in my hand. She looked exhausted, worn, like carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Jason, I wanted to tell you so many times," she whispered, "but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you, afraid of what it would mean for Ethan, for us." Her voice cracked, and I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. "How long?" I asked, barely able to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Since before we got married," she said quietly. "Everything made sense, yet nothing did. I wanted to scream, to rage, but I also wanted to understand." But Lisa's silence about the baby's paternity wasn't just her secret. It was a shared burden with Michael, who had re-entered the picture when she found out she was pregnant. The tangled web stretched farther than I had imagined. As if the legal battles and family betrayals weren't enough, now I had to face the reality that the child I had raised, loved, and fought for might not be mine, at least not biologically. The weeks that followed were a blur of DNA tests, awkward conversations with doctors, and soul-crushing moments of doubt. Lisa promised she wanted to work through it, to figure out what it meant for all of us. But every time I looked at Ethan, my heart twisted with questions. Would he see me differently? Would this change how I loved him? Could I still be his dad if I wasn't his father? Therapy sessions with my counselor became lifelines. "Family isn't just blood," she reminded me gently. "It's love, commitment, the daily choices you make." But even as I clung to that hope, outside forces weren't letting me forget the bitter truth. Lisa's brother, who had always disliked me, began stirring trouble, whispering to neighbors, spreading rumors, even contacting child services with vague accusations. I was drowning in a sea of uncertainty and hostility. One night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, I sat alone on the porch, phone in hand, scrolling through yet another threatening message. And then a new email arrived. From Michael: "Jason, we need to talk. The truth isn't what you think." Just when I thought I was ready to face everything, a new twist threatened to unravel it all. That email from Michael haunted me more than anything else. I stared at it for what felt like hours before finally forcing myself to open it. "Jason, I owe you the truth. Not just about the baby, but about everything Lisa never told you." My hands trembled as I read on. Michael's message painted a picture darker than I could have imagined. He confessed that years ago, when he and Lisa were teenagers, they made mistakes, big ones. She had confided in him her fears, her dreams, and yes, a secret pregnancy that she was too scared to face alone. When I came into the picture, Michael said he stepped back, believing Lisa had chosen me and that the past should stay buried. But now, with the baby on the way, things were different. Michael wasn't just the biological father, he wanted to be involved. He promised to respect my role as a father figure, but he also demanded honesty and transparency. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, layered upon betrayal. I confronted Lisa again, this time armed with Michael's words. She broke down, tears streaming, admitting everything, the secrets, the fears, the lies. But in that vulnerable moment, I saw her not as a villain, but as a deeply flawed human struggling with impossible choices. Our conversations turned raw and real, painful but necessary. We talked about Ethan, about the baby, about what family really means. And slowly, painfully, I realized that love is messy, complicated, and often far from perfect. Legally, the battles raged on. Custody, property, and parental rights consumed my days. Friends and family took sides, some sympathized, others judged. Social media became a minefield of opinions and unsolicited advice. Yet, amidst the chaos, Ethan remained my anchor. He didn't care about biology or betrayal. To him, I was dad. That simple truth gave me strength when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I hired a new lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and understood the complexities of blended families. We negotiated custody arrangements that prioritized Ethan's well-being over bitterness. Financially, I was drained, court fees, legal battles, and the cost of moving into a smaller apartment. But the house? After months of fighting, I managed to keep it, though it came with strings attached. It was a hollow victory. Emotionally, I was a wreck. I started therapy, not just to heal, but to rediscover myself beyond the pain. I learned to forgive, not for Lisa or Michael, but for myself. To let go of the anger that threatened to consume me. Months later, as the baby was born, a healthy girl, I found myself at the hospital, holding a fragile new life. Lisa looked at me with tears in her eyes, silently asking for a chance to rebuild. I didn't know if we could, but I knew that life had changed forever. We weren't a perfect family, but we were a family. A fractured, complicated, yet somehow still connected family. I'm not going to lie, I don't have all the answers. There are days when the pain comes back in waves, when the betrayal feels fresh, but I also have moments of hope. Hope that love can survive even the deepest wounds. Hope that my son knows he is loved beyond measure. And hope that one day we might all find peace. This story isn't about fairy tale endings. It's about the messy, raw reality of life when everything you thought was solid crumbles. And the strength it takes to keep going anyway.